Now this is the kind of hard sci-fi I live for. Exception is the new Netflix original miniseries. Do people still call them miniseries, or are they limited run prestige television now? The new sci-fi animated series is a Japanese co-production and features the option for dual audio. I watched the English version, which features Nolan North at his most Nathan Drake. The series takes place in the distant future. A small team of scientists are tasked with terraforming a new world in preparation for humanity's arrival. The problem is, they were all born yesterday. Because no living thing can survive the faster-than-light trip, the ship is equipped with an artificial womb that 3D prints the scientist based on backed-up memories and genetic samples from their originals. It essentially clones them. The team is alright with this because they've been promised certain rewards upon the mission's completion. However, the idea that they're being manipulated is never far from their minds. The problem comes when during the printing process for Lewis, the final member of the team, the ship is hit with a solar flare. This causes the womb to misprint Lewis, turning him into some kind of horrible abomination. The team decides to euthanize and reprint Lewis, but before they can do that, he wakes up and escapes into the bowels of the ship. This may be the kind of setup you would expect from a typical Alien clone, and the series could have just as easily stuck to those beats. However, the story quickly grows beyond the premise of horrible monster on a spaceship and into something far more interesting and depthful. Firstly, this isn't the kind of future you expect. Instead of being the typical corpo dystopia that is so often used in sci-fi horror, this is a far kinder and gentler future. At least if we go by the actions of the central characters. Each one of the scientists feels intense guilt at the idea of having to destroy a living being, no matter how monstrous. They debate the ethics of their actions, and when some of them disagree, you understand all sides. The characters themselves are also very distinct from each other and have strong personalities and motivations. Max seems the most antagonistic at first, but evolves over the course of the series into the most heroic of the group. The physically biggest of the group, Oscar, is also the most gentle and soft-spoken. He's a father of two, or at least his original was. There's also Patty, the ghost-like botanist who seems to haunt the ship. She is driven by a deep love of life in all its forms, something that will cause her to butt up against the crew and their hunt for the misprint. They are all seemingly led by Nina, who serves as the show's primary protagonist. Nina is about as stern as these characters get, mostly because she's the one constantly focused on the importance of their mission. This isn't just a matter of human expansionism, but of human survival. There is some background about how Earth is being shared with alternative intelligence, which has destroyed any ability for human exceptionalism. Hey, you fucks asking AI to draw you porn? This is what that'll lead to. Go out and buy a hustler and do your part to save humanity. Finally, there is Lewis himself, the one played by everyone's favorite video game voice actor, Nolan North. North ends up playing two versions of this role, the monstrous misprint and the much more successful reprint. As I said, the plot goes to far more interesting places that raises questions about the ethics of terraforming a planet. By the time the story reaches its conclusion, you really feel like every character has come a long way, narratively speaking. I was mostly satisfied with the ending, even feeling a little teary-eyed at a particular montage. However, I do feel like that one character has a particularly unsatisfying end. I won't spoil anything about the twists and turns, because if you are a fan of this kind of cerebral hard sci-fi, I would recommend watching Exception. What I will talk more about is the design of the show, which for the most part is wonderful. The ship that most of the story takes place on is unique and interesting. It looks mostly like a giant lionfish, using its fins as solar sails and generators. The inside is filled with gold and white, looking more like Avenue 5 than a scientific vessel. Much is made of the ship's 3D printing capabilities. Not only can it create life, it is also shown several times as a tool maker. However, crucially, the crew can't print any dedicated weapons, which means they have to make do with scalpels and hammers. I even like the spacesuits and their chest emblems, which seem like they're more at home on a superhero than a scientist. I do feel like there is some over-design in the characters, especially Mac, who suffers from anime protagonist syndrome. His hair? Yeah, well, just look at it. Look what's going on in the back here. Look at those. You need a haircut. Oscar also has issues when it comes to his proportions. It feels like his eyes take up most of his face, and yet they don't really express anything. Only Nina and Louis seem grounded in their designs. Though proper Louis does look like every PS2 horror game protagonist ever. I know these characters were designed by the same legendary artist who created so many Final Fantasy characters. However, I feel like there might be something about this work that doesn't really translate into the 3D CGI the series is animated in. The other questionable design choice is the title card design, which looks to be direct from 2003. Seriously, this looks like it should be the title font for a Destiny's Child album. Despite these flaws, I thoroughly enjoyed Exception. It's the kind of cerebral sci-fi I crave. The characters are intelligent and thoughtful. They approach the dangerous situations they find themselves in with caution and consideration for what is at stake. The series also has some interesting ideas when it comes to things like purpose and morality. These characters were literally made for a reason, and some of those reasons end up conflicting with each other. Exception gets a 4 out of 5. Yeah, it was a surprisingly good show. The trailer didn't really do it justice when I first saw the trailer, but I was hooked pretty much from the first episode, and I enjoyed these characters and I enjoyed this story. I would like to see more like this, but this story is done. You know, you don't have to do anything else with it. Netflix. I am glad it ended as a miniseries, because if it did have a cliffhanger ending, it probably would have been added to the pile of things that had cliffhanger endings on Netflix that were never fulfilled. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, stay safe and be who you are.